unsettling ones are the ones that take us by surprise. That's what I was going through, so I might have been a bit more passionate and emotional than I might ordinarily have been because the topic was so close to my heart. But so we talked about how to deal with these things and what to expect when we go through these transitions in our lives, expected or unexpected. You can have weeks or months or longer of emotional spaces that feel awkward. Things don't feel settled yet, and we have to cut ties with things that have become quite familiar to us. And that's also very unsettling. Whether it comes from a natural end, such as the end of school, or it comes from something imposed upon us. You get laid off from your job, or you break up with someone and you weren't expecting it. You generally have this gray area of transitions that feel very very awkward. You can have some experiences of depression and anxiety. Whenever we move forward or have a change, there's loss involved in it. Even if it's a change we want, we leave something behind. And there's a grieving process that has to go on with that. And if it's an unexpected or unwanted change, then of course the grieving and the shock and the depression are much greater. And that breeds anxiety. We worry about an unknown future, and we're out of our comfort zones. So much like I talked about at the top of the show, where you go into things that you hear about on the news or whatever that are upsetting, you can go into these feelings that you have during your transition. Acknowledge your losses and feel it. And eventually see if you can find a way to image yourself closing that door. Because the sooner you can do that, the sooner you can look forward to a new beginning. So recognizing endings and beginnings is a real important tool. If you can cultivate a sense of a new start, okay, you don't know what it is, and maybe you didn't feel like you were done with the old yet, but here you are. If you can cultivate a sense of optimism or even curiosity about what's new, what's ahead. If you can look back at times when you made other transitions. Maybe you changed schools, or you moved to a new neighborhood, or you left an old relationship and started a new one, or a job and started a new one. Think about how you handled that, what experiences you had, what skills you took away from those situations. And realize, say to yourself that, you can do this again, and this is leading me to even more than I've been before. Try to see the opportunity there. Even though it may be difficult to look at it that way. It's true, but it may take some time to embrace that. during these times of transition, when everything seems to be in flux, all your old patterns are collapsing, and it may make you feel unsteady. But that is the moment of opportunity. That's the time when you can explore and brainstorm and begin to make over your life and find new patterns, new ways that will eventually, even if they don't feel that way immediately, eventually be better than the ones you had before. And try to do this as soon as you can. If you let anxiety take over, that can quickly become a habit, and you can get locked into that. But try to tap into the momentum of the change and use it. Use that energy to move you forward. And get support. You're going through a transition, a life transition. Call some friends. Talk to people who are going to similar things. You might be able to find a network or a support group, or even if you have it in your medical coverage, you might be able to get some help from a therapist. Because that feeling of being ungrounded, almost lost in a way, can really be difficult. And counselors, friends, support from others can really keep you a little bit more grounded and help you keep perspective. And then again, expectations. To me, the healthiest way to do this, and this again coming from my metaphysical perspective, is not to have any. Or, well, I won't say that, not to have any, but to expect the best outcomes without trying to demand what they will be, or even to know what they will be. Because oftentimes we don't know what is the best outcome. We may be stuck in a desired outcome that may not be the best thing for us. But if we can put that aside and open up to where we are actually going, and have an expectation of the very best, but without trying to dictate what that will be, that may be the healthiest way of all to deal with it. A realistic time frame for changes. It's also important. Patience is important. If you're getting over a loss, particularly if you're getting over something like either a breakup or perhaps a death of a loved one, those are things that take the time they take, and they never really go away entirely. The intensity just changes. And this is particularly true in loss or death of a loved one. You go through the grieving process, and you do get to a point where you can continue on, but that's always going to be with you. So many times people want to say, well, let me get closure on this, let me grieve and get over the grief. And the fact of the matter is that it doesn't really work that way. You do move on, you do move forward, but that's always there. And rather than being a path, a direct path, a linear path, it's more of a circle, a cycle. So you will go through cycles where you feel those feelings again, or feel them in a different way, and then you move on. So that was our discussion about life transitions. And I guess people could really relate to that because who hasn't had one, right? And the next very popular, as I mentioned, show, as it usually is our show on future trends. So we're going to talk about that now. And when you talk to futurists, or when you talk to anybody about the future, there's generally two general trends in which they talk about. One tends to be a little bit on the catastrophizing side, and one tends to be on the very hopeful side. So I'm going to strike a balance between the two and look at two different sources, one that tends to be more towards the pessimistic, and one that looks towards the optimistic. So, we'll talk about some optimistic changes first. How about that? So one of the things that actually at this year last time we were still talking about, and it's still true and will be continuing on for at least another 40 years. This is a large-scale trend because of new discoveries and innovation and the scale of economies and human need. You're going to see technology and connectivity costs continue to fall. For instance, solar panels and other sources of alternative energy, which were so expensive that they didn't. Many people said it just didn't make sense to invest in them because you couldn't replace them as cheaply as energy from other sources, our usual sources. But now they have become the cheapest source of electric power. And by 2030, they will probably make most other ways of power generation look obsolete. And this is regardless of whoever is in political power at the moment. I mean, we know that in general, Republicans tend to focus on coal and oil, those old forms of energy generation, whereas and the Democrats tend to want to focus on investing in the new ones, but it doesn't matter. It's going in that direction, and all sides will have to embrace, just simply from an economic standpoint. So. Not to worry. Now, certain, depending on who is in power, it can go faster or it can go slower. So then also another very positive thing to look forward to is universal access to the mobile web and e-commerce via mobile devices. So, most human beings in the more developed nations of the world have access to this, but many do not. Many right here in this country do not. But that's going to change. And by 2030, trillions of people will be joined up online and sharing information, and it'll be a great explosive phase of digital expansion. Now, how you feel about that, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, is another topic, which we'll get to in a minute. But right now, we'll just kind of keep an optimistic frame of mind. 1 billion children alive in the world. Now, never again in human history will so many children be growing up at the same time. All will see your lifestyle in advertising, on TV or on the web. All will aspire to middle-class wealth, education, and healthcare. And the global population, it's estimated, will peak at about 11 billion in 2060. And those 1 billion children will all be adults in less than 18 years, and most will have their own in 25. Their views and lifestyles will dominate our planet for the next